when we look at the injuries that Diana had, they were very minor injuries.
It began with a ripple that swiftly turned into a wave. The long silenced figures closest to Princess Diana, her surgeon, Dr. MonSef Dahman, her personal driver, Colin Tebbutt, and her trusted butler, Paul Burrell, have broken their silence. After decades of mystery, denials, and swirling conspiracy theories, the trio's admissions have shaken the world. They confirmed what millions had suspected, but never dared to believe fully. That Princess Diana's tragic death in that Paris tunnel was no random accident. It was an orchestrated inside job. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Dr. MonSef Dahman, the French surgeon who fought to save Diana's life in the Petit-Salpêtrière hospital, once described her injuries as traumatic, yet not necessarily fatal if she had received immediate and uninterrupted care. For years, he maintained a professional stance, keeping within the medical facts. But something shifted. The weight of silence became too much, and he revealed critical inconsistencies he had been forced to suppress. The timeline of her medical care was manipulated. Certain individuals entered restricted hospital zones under the guise of authority. Equipment necessary for a rapid surgical intervention was, inexplicably, delayed or redirected. Dahman had always found it strange that no senior trauma consultant was permitted to act autonomously that night, a deviation from hospital protocol in such emergencies. Meanwhile, Colin Tebbutt, Diana's loyal driver who managed her personal transportation schedule with precision, spoke of unusual instructions in the days leading up to the crash. He remembered being told, through an unfamiliar chain of command, that she would be using a different driver and vehicle while in Paris, something he was neither consulted about nor permitted to alter. Tebbutt's unease grew when he realized the car assigned had previously exhibited mechanical issues, and the selected driver, Henry Paul, had no prior involvement in Diana's private travel arrangements. More disturbingly, Colin recalled that security protocols were watered down. The protective team that typically accompanied Diana was trimmed, and there was pressure from unknown channels for her to avoid traditional security detail. Everything that once ran like clockwork was suddenly chaotic. Paul Burrell, Diana's butler and confidant, who stood by her through her separation and turbulent years of emotional strain, had remained publicly loyal, but cryptic. However, in a moment that stunned even seasoned royal watchers, he opened up about the days preceding Diana's final trip. He recounted frantic conversations with the princess, who expressed anxiety about being watched and silenced. Burrell spoke of letters she wrote, now widely speculated to contain exact details of threats she perceived from within the royal establishment. But beyond the letters, Paul described a chilling pattern. Phone calls interrupted by static, staff members replaced without notice, and unexplained surveillance equipment found near Diana's residence. He sensed that something grave was brewing, but like many close to her, underestimated the extent of the danger. Together, these revelations form a haunting tapestry. They illuminate an intricate, deliberate strategy to isolate Diana, redirect her from safety, and suppress those who could intervene. While each man held a different role in her life, one medical, one logistical, one emotional, they all noticed threads unraveling before the fatal event. None could have anticipated just how calculated the unraveling was, and while they each faced pressure, intimidation, and even veiled threats to remain quiet over the years, the truth clawed its way to the surface. What makes their confessions so staggering is not just what they reveal, but what they imply. The idea that elements within the establishment, or those empowered by it, may have coordinated or allowed the death of the people's princess is a seismic notion. Not only does it challenge decades of official narratives, but it also forces a reevaluation of everything that followed. The rushed investigations, the contradictory testimonies, the suppression of CCTV footage, and the shifting statements from those present at the scene. Dr. Dahman's assertion that Diana's injuries were survivable if treated promptly underscores the chilling possibility that help was intentionally delayed. His descriptions of medical staff being overridden, the delays in transferring Diana to the operating theater, and the presence of unknown figures in hospital corridors raise critical questions. If her death wasn't instantaneous and if life-saving treatment was plausible, then withholding such care would be tantamount to complicity. Colin Tebbutt's experience with abrupt changes to her transportation and reduced security amplifies suspicion. The route Diana took that night, through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, was never standard. It was longer and less safe than the alternatives. Combine this with a vehicle choice that was questionable at best, and a driver whose blood alcohol level remains disputed to this day, and a grim pattern begins to emerge. Tebbutt recalls that even in the aftermath, he was stonewalled by authorities when he requested access to the wrecked car or attempted to connect with colleagues involved in post-crash logistics. Everything felt curated, as though they were being directed away from the truth. Paul Burrell's emotional account of Diana's premonitions and growing fear provides perhaps the most chilling insight. She knew. She had a visceral sense of an approaching catastrophe. Paul described her as feeling hunted, expressing distrust not just of those within the monarchy, but of people in her immediate surroundings. Advisors, staff, even some security officials. When someone so in tune with the machinations of high society expresses fear for her life and then dies under mysterious circumstances, it becomes impossible to ignore her warnings. Burrell's claim that some of her diaries were taken, that personal notes were removed from her Kensington Palace residence in the days following her death, adds to the sense of a wide-reaching effort to erase, to cleanse, and to control the story. None of these men is given to theatricality. They are not publicity seekers, nor do they benefit from the chaos these revelations cause. But perhaps that is what makes their admissions so compelling. They have little to gain and much to lose by coming forward, which lends weight to their every word. The emotional toll of withholding the truth for so long is evident in their demeanor. Tired, solemn, yet resolute. They can no longer bear the burden of complicity by silence. The implications of their testimonies are vast. They reopen the debate about the nature of power, the role of monarchy in shaping public narrative, and the extent to which institutions can hide truths in plain sight. If Diana, arguably the most photographed, followed, and beloved woman of her time, can be eliminated through covert means, what does that say about the safety of dissent, the vulnerability of public figures, and the illusion of transparency in modern democracies? This isn't merely a royal scandal. It's a glimpse into a world where image is controlled with precision, where truth can be fragmented and buried under layers of bureaucracy and polite denials. It compels people to reconsider what they accepted as truth in 1997 and to acknowledge that the fog of conspiracy may have concealed a very real and deliberate plot. Moreover, these revelations challenge the public's relationship with history. We are told to trust institutions, to believe in official statements, and to dismiss alternative narratives as paranoid fantasy. But now, those closest to Diana are validating what was once confined to whispered suspicions and fringe documentaries. This convergence of first-hand accounts from credible, intimately involved individuals forces a reassessment of the entire episode. Not just the crash, but the orchestration of events leading up to it. For years, skeptics were painted as opportunists or romantics unwilling to accept a tragic accident. But what if their instincts were correct? What if they sensed, before anyone else, the careful manipulation of evidence, the subtle redirection of attention, the discrediting of anyone who dared ask the wrong questions? The trio's confirmation turns those skeptics into prophets, their doubts into damning evidence. The fact that Diana was not just a royal, but a disruptor, someone willing to challenge traditions, expose hypocrisy, and reframe what it meant to be a member of the British monarchy, makes her a uniquely dangerous figure in the eyes of those who depend on continuity and silence. Her growing independence, her humanitarian influence, and her willingness to speak her truth were not just annoying, they were threatening. She was rewriting the script of royalty in real time, and not everyone wanted that script changed. Her plans for the future, including a possible move to the United States and further humanitarian involvement across conflict zones, represented a shift in power. She was poised to become more than a princess. She was on her way to becoming a global force, unrestrained by palace advisors and tradition. That vision of Diana, free and uncontained, was too much for some. And now, those closest to her are confirming that the forces working against her weren't distant threats. They were in her midst, woven into her daily life. What makes this moment so powerful is the alignment of timelines, memories, and silent observations finally spoken aloud. Dahman, Tebbutt, and Burrell all highlight subtle manipulations that, when pieced together, form a puzzle too cohesive to ignore. The mismatched medical timeline, the inexplicable vehicle switch, the psychological warfare Diana endured. All of it now comes into sharp, painful focus. For those who mourn Diana not just as a figure but as a beacon of empathy and courage, these revelations are a cruel validation. They confirm that she wasn't paranoid, that her fears weren't dramatic exaggerations. She saw the contours of the threat, even if she couldn't pinpoint its exact shape. Her instincts were not only accurate, they were tragically prophetic. The global response to this collective confession is one of stunned reckoning. It touches every layer of society, from royalists who feel betrayed, to activists who see it as evidence of systemic rot, to ordinary citizens who once lit candles outside Kensington Palace in disbelief and grief. What was once thought of as a random tragedy is now being reframed as a calculated removal. The world now stares into the abyss of this revelation and must ask, if such a fate could befall someone so prominent with such global support and constant media attention, what else has been hidden in the margins of history? What other narratives have been carefully constructed to preserve institutions at the expense of individuals? The silence is broken. The weight of three men's truths now shifts the burden onto the public. To listen, to examine, and to question. And in doing so, perhaps finally, Princess Diana's voice will be fully heard. Not as a whisper from beyond, but as a cry for justice echoed by those who were closest to her in life, and who have now chosen courage over comfort. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Diana's surgeon, driver, butler confirming inside job? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.